Get fresh every day, make progress, keep stacking this dough. I'm rocking old stock, brand new sneakers, and my funds is valley low. That's money on my phone. She said, boy, what you about to do? These vultures at your door. I said, load up these 2 shotgun shells and bust them stereo. I got the only pair of these that's ever being sold. Goddamn, they just came out with some more. I ain't know they came out with these in the gold. Hell nah, they didn't, homie. It's all about who you know. Remember who you are, show love and always ask for more. Get fresh every day, make progress, keep stacking this dough. I know these boys see me and I'm grinding, staying in my lane, looking clean, slow driving. Ain't no need to rush, I left early, I'm on time then. Position in the middle of them thighs and ears to the future. Innovation is the mindset. Get fresh every day. The sun is my rival. Alright then, respect me on arrival. If you feel me, we can ride. Then I'll ride. Then G F F E D G fresh every day. D G F F with my baby, smoking, rolling up some different flavors. Looking for a unicorn to start up something, stack some paper. I be on my usual, just vibing, flashing with the paper. Niggas gon' be mad when I was mad, I never seen this paper. I hold it down, I stay 100, never with the bacon. She told me that just like a gun, we click, you get to hating. I like to rap, you like to rap, I'm destined for the greatness. You destined for the trap. Your talent's getting wasted. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. No please don't do me dirty, yeah. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. Holding, growing, rolling, blowing down what I put in this paper. Most these niggas never seen a man blow without prayer. I like to keep a couple stacks in the cup for my baby. She get what she want and she gon' ride cause that is my baby. Call it what you want but you can never ever call it crazy. I put my plans before my thoughts, that's how I'm feeling lately. I got the bounce, she got an ounce, oh now she think we dating. Big amounts, big accounts, we got some different cravings. Raindrops hit my window when I see your funds getting real low. I eat that pussy up real slow. 100 grand, now you niggas talking real dough. I put on for my kinfolk, baby. What them jeans skin thin for? Yeah, this the type of clout kids kill for. Yeah, this the type of clout kids kill for. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. No please don't do me dirty. Hey. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. Just hold me down, no please don't do me dirty. No please don't do me dirty. Check, yeah. This for the swingers in Texas, the cruisers out in Weston. I got love for anybody, disrespect it, your chest it. If you got paper, I got paper, let's make this a message. Tell the world how we took over, we did it through blessings. You see my problems, not with you, just the grades on your testing. I wish for better, wish for cheddar, let's get it together. She's on my arm, my lucky charm, but a million times better. I said my piece actors, and these actors don't rap about what they see. Look, baby, I know just what you mean.
What's going on, y'all? It's your boy, DameSmiff. Good morning. Welcome. And so this morning, we're actually going to be discussing the 250th year birthday of the United States. And it's actually properly called the Semiquincentennial birthday. So how are you guys doing in the chat? What's going on? So most of what we're going to be talking about is going to be from obviously the perspectives of musicians, but it's going to be diving into the importance of events like this, especially for, you know, your own country and things like that, because we'll explore different countries' celebrations of independence and birthdays and things like that as well. But then you'll also be able to understand how it will affect you from your music career in terms of tourism, opportunities, everlasting historical moments and things like that, all those kinds of things, right? So celebrating the 250th anniversary of the US on July 4th marks a massive milestone since the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And so this multi-year commemoration is bringing a massive wave of cultural events. We already have the World Cup here. I think that's really like the kickoff, if you really want to get down to it. Because if you want to consider how we were talking about musicians planning tours, musicians planning album drops and things like that, you got to think like there's more events surrounding this than you would think or than you would consider when you have such a short time frame. Like it's not really about just the day, right? There's like a whole quarter of opportunities, right? Which for those of you who are new, a quarter is just 3 months time, right? A quarter of a year. And so major anchors like America's Block Party at LA Memorial Coliseum and massive gatherings in historic hubs like Boston and Philadelphia are drawing unprecedented influx of domestic and international tourists eager to participate in this event. So for the music industry, the surge in tourism translates directly into an extraordinary boom of live music, gig opportunities, and things like that. And then you have cool things like pyrotechnic spectacles, community picnics, nationally synchronized music festivals requiring an immense amount of live audio. You ever seen that done in Japan where they have like those huge opening sequences for like the Olympics and stuff like that? Like that takes a lot of technical work. Forget knowing your sheet music. Like it takes a lot of science to pull that kind of feat off. Also, we will be seeing them create a lucrative landscape for working musicians in terms of like how we can actually do these gigs, right? So for most of us, we're still on TikTok and stuff like that. But those who are going to get out the house this summer, you're actually going to have a lot more opportunity than most people because you actually get to touch the people, you know, in real time. But you'll also be able to kind of set the precedent for what it really looks like for this, right? This is why it's so historical, right? So if you get out there and you do a concert or benefit concert and let's say it's completely online or maybe it's a headphone concert or something like that, I don't know what you could think of, but it will be connected to this event. It won't be really connected to who you are more so, but every time, if you can pull it off, every time people will consider this moment, they will consider what you gave them, right? And so that's the key thing that we want to focus on here as musicians, because that is the opportunity we look for in most opportunities. That's the value we look for in most opportunities. So from high profile headlining sets to regional community bands and tribute acts and street buskers, I think street buskers are going to make the most money, honestly. The demand for live performances has skyrocketed. Local bars, restaurants, and downtown pavilions are heavily booked, and downtown pavilions are heavily booked with like talent to capture all that foot traffic that comes to there. So like we have a park near us that has a huge pavilion. It's like I wouldn't say huge, but it's a little amphitheater, right? And with a huge field in front of it. They can actually host a lot of different events there. And so considering getting into one of those positions is actually very hype. Now imagine being near a major city in the US or even in Washington, D.C. at that time, right? There's a lot of different opportunities you can probably come up with just off of that thought alone. Now combine it with the other businesses in the area and things like that that you can actually collaborate with on, let's say, product partnership, maybe just, you know, real estate. Maybe you can get cool with a certain location so you can busk in front of their building and things like that and bring them customers and things like that. Who knows? But ultimately, this milestone serves as an economic windfall for the gig economy, allowing musicians to play a central role in shaping the sonic backdrop of the nation's 250th birthday. Beyond the financial benefits of packed performance schedules, the historic nature of the events provide artists with unique opportunities to network, reach entirely new audiences, and build momentum that will sustain their careers long after the fireworks fade. And so for many of you, you probably haven't considered that because you've been working on your personal brand so much. And that's normal, right? Most musicians, when we get to school and stuff like that, usually you putting your name on the paper, you're playing music you like, or you're writing music you like, you're working with people you like, right? But in the grand scheme of what an industry makes up, right? This is why when I think, well, a long time ago, I was telling you guys on this channel that many artists need to consider themselves as a part of society and not so separate. And the separation should really come in skill set, knowledge, experience, not so much your identity. Like you should identify with the people you come from and the culture you come from, but you definitely would be separate from them as far as like you can sing really well or play your instrument or dance really well, right? That's the separation, right? It's kind of like how you want to separate, you know, the construction worker from just being a dad. Like he's a dad, but he's also a construction worker. You get what I'm saying? So being able to do this as artists will actually be super beneficial because you can actually weave in your lifestyle seamlessly, unless it is not something you actually care about or represent, then of which these kinds of events can still be an opportunity for you, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult to handle because you're not really in the moment with everyone else at the same time. So you would have to be essentially pulling your audience from what's culturally relevant to focus on you. And that's harder. It'd be like trying to make I don't know, like an album during Christmas time that has nothing to do with the holidays or something, right? So for most people, that's really, really hard to do. So we're going to explore a lot of how musicians today are planning on doing it, but we got to look at it from the perspective of what actually are we going to be expecting with these events. Like we've all seen the 4th of July and we've all been to cookouts, but have you ever thrown one or had to, you know, be at a parade to perform? Like the different perspective, right? But first, let's just get down to the bare bones and see what it actually is that goes on with the 4th of July.
History. Plus, in that podcast episode, I have some early predictions about the 4th of July. You can listen in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on the Trip Hacks DC website, or whatever your favorite podcast app is. And I will leave a link to that episode in the video description. If you're planning on visiting museums in DC this year, most of them do not require any reservations or tickets.
And that's actually pretty cool. I've lived in there in PG County, and that's one of the things locals actually don't take advantage of, and we did actually. So going to school there was fun, but then playing music live there, like busking in DC, is super fun. And a part of the free museum attraction does bring way more people, right, from all over the world because it's an international hub, right? So the ability to ask these businesses or these companies to get into a very strategic spot in order for you to, you know, catch that foot traffic and busk was super cool. Now, the best part about it for us was that we took what we had as far as our instruments, like the best of our instruments, and we took that out there. Like we didn't try to like give like a watered down version of our show or something like that. We just brought everything. Like we had the horns, we had the piano some days, we had the drum set up there and stuff like that. And for people walking along, they're used to seeing busking, but then it's different when you have it like set up to where it's undeniable value in terms of what they wanted to hear. So we were playing the music that they like there. And then we also played our original music. And then we also played a lot of music that we probably were just, you know, fooling around and messing around with. And people appreciated it. The key thing for most musicians today, you guys are stuck on TikTok. Like you're probably going to go and try to busk outside and your focus is going to be your TikTok live stream, and people are going to notice that. And because they notice that, they don't want to be on camera. So they'll probably avoid you or won't cross the camera to get on there. You see people live busking online and stuff like that. And sometimes it works, but it's really them trying to like capitalize on every single angle instead of focusing on what is right in front of them. Right. So let's think about, let's say Red Bull, right? Red Bull has like this huge sports campaign, and they got like people going to space and jumping out of like airplanes and all that stuff, right? Really crazy stuff. But when you think about the college campus near you, you've never seen, at least on your algorithm likely, a salesman on that campus trying to live stream him throwing up a tent and selling Red Bull to the students on campus, right? And the reason why is because it's not his particular job. Someone else could be there assisting with that, but his particular job is sales. And so what I think most musicians are going to run into with a problem is that you're going to have to deal with sales skills. Like, you're going to have to actually talk to people and like go beyond the music, right? But then you're also going to have to battle with the idea that most of these people don't know you, and marketing you is going to be harder, especially if they're not here for you. So playing culturally relevant music is key to busking. That's why you'll see people playing covers most times.
But a few do, including the Air and Space Museum, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and the National Zoo. Tickets are free, but you do need them, so make sure to go on the official Smithsonian website and get them in advance. Speaking of the zoo, the National Zoo just announced this month that a baby elephant has been born and is joining the herd. The National Zoo may not be the biggest zoo in the world, but between the new-ish pandas and the new baby elephant, those are a few compelling reasons to check it out. Mount Vernon, George Washington's home, is another major tourist site that has mostly reopened. It was under heavy renovation last year, and most of the mansion was unavailable when you visited. Now they've moved into the final phase of renovation, which means that most of the mansion is back open, but the cellar is still closed. That final phase of renovation should wrap up later this year. The National Geographic Museum is also reopening in
Do you see this location right here? This is actually a pretty sweet location. But yeah, if it sets to open, most of you are thinking like, oh man, I could sit in the front door. Not really. That's not the idea, right? You want to think logically about what tourists are doing in an area, right? And then likely, get permission to do this. But let's say people go to the museum and they're like, I'm sure the museum has like food and restaurants and stuff in there, but they don't want to eat at the museum. They want to eat at the local spots, right? Like Uncle Ben's and stuff like that. Well, what you can do is you can set up nearby metro stations, or maybe nearby Uncle Ben's or other restaurants that are nearby. And so what will then happen is that all those people that are walking by, they're more likely to hear your music and your product, and you can interact with them. But it also raises the amount of people that would be coming by, right? It's less likely that the National Geographic wants 30 different busking bands sitting in front of their building, right? So you have to be kind of strategic about busking.
2026, after a multi-year renovation. I've always liked this one, and it's been one of my favorite private museums. Back on the National Mall, work at the Lincoln Memorial is ongoing. The Lincoln Memorial has been under heavy construction for the past several years, as they finish building a brand new museum in the Undercroft. The plan is to have this new museum open by summer, along with infrastructure improvements like a new store and new restrooms, and accessibility improvements including 2 new elevators. And once those new elevators are operational, the big accessibility ramp that's currently out front will come down. The Tidal Basin Seawall project is also coming along. Construction of the seawall itself is now complete, and they've moved into the landscaping portion of the project. Maybe you can see behind me, but the fences are still up around the perimeter. So I don't know whether we'll be able to walk on the new paths they've laid this spring for the...
So seeing that there's snow on the ground, we can tell when this video was shot, right? Early in the year. So most of this has probably been moved along a little bit, but it's more than likely like the larger projects are still going on. But can you see how they're trying to really move towards this event, right? This deadline or this birthday is important, and it's very key to how this entire city is moving, at least for the next like 3 months, right?
Cherry Blossom Festival. But even if we can, it's going to take a few years for them to plant the replacement cherry trees here and for them to fill out the space. Speaking of fences, The National Park Service sent out a news release about a month ago about 18 water fountains and water features in DC that they plan to restore or renovate.
So these features right here actually make up a lot of what attracts tourists, right? And the cool thing about what you get usually from these fountains and stuff like that is another source of income where you get an opportunity for businesses to come set up around these things. Like you would see a lot of times at the national park, food trucks, vendors, salesmen for like merchandise, t-shirts, and some of them are selling like, you know, I guess you can say travel goods, like little, I'm trying to think of the word, goodie bags, I guess you can say, to help you along with your trip and stuff like that. And so for a lot of people, if you don't have these things, the general customer and consumer is just going to go to a brick and mortar building, which kind of ruins the whole, oh yeah, we can all be a part of this, you know, capitalism conversation. And so consider all these locations as possible locations for busking, and then probably outside of like, you know, memorials for graveyards and stuff like that. But most of these places are in like very public parks and stuff like that. So cleaning up your parks and making everything super nice is actually valuable to your community, because more people will be, I guess, prompted to come see the new changes. But at the same time, you have people who've never seen this stuff before have appreciation for it.
Some of them are already fenced off, like the Korean War Memorial and the Columbus Memorial outside of Union Station. Others on the list haven't been touched yet. National Park Service also sent out a second news release that same day that said the World War II Memorial was completely closing for several months.
So by the time this live stream is going up, this one you're watching here, the Union Station Memorial is actually done. And there's actually a lot of content and people taking pictures and photos of it coming out where they're saying like it never looked that good before. It's gorgeous and things like that.
This was quite concerning to me, as a multi-month closure of a major memorial would be a big deal for a lot of tourists, especially in peak spring season. But for whatever reason, that news release was not accurate. I went to the World War II Memorial this week and no construction had even started. And I was able to confirm with National Park Service that even once construction begins, they will not be closing the entire memorial. So that's a bit of a relief. But the bottom line for visitors this spring is that you should expect at least some of the national monuments and memorials to be fenced off to some degree and under construction. But which ones, on which timeline, that's still a big question mark. Now, let's talk about White House tours. I've been getting a lot of questions about these lately, and unfortunately there is a lot of conflicting information floating around out there.
So White House tours are actually super lucrative for musicians, especially instrumentalists. If you're not so much a singer, it's a lot, I guess you can say, a lot more versatile for you, because you can play the marches, the classics, and the jazz standards and things like that. But it provides versatility because people want to hear certain instruments in certain rooms. So like a large room, a lot of people like pianos, more intimate, smaller rooms, stringed instruments and things like that. So you can find your niche. The cool thing is if you can actually get one of these situations, you will be coming across probably the popular, almost most notable people in the planet will come to see this day, will come see this tour and things like that. Even if it's not at specifically the tour of the White House, the location is an international hub for all kinds of business, all kinds of cultures.
Especially from AI chatbots, which, as an aside, you should all be way more skeptical about trusting to plan your trips. White House tours were very on and off last year. In August 2025, White House tours were suspended indefinitely so that they could bring in the wrecking balls and demolish the East Wing. For the next several months, there were 0 public tours of the White House. In December 2025, White House tours resumed with a reimagined tour route. What is a reimagined route? It's a shorter route with fewer things to see. I want to make this crystal clear because even before last August, people often had wildly unrealistic.
So you see how many people are sitting in line, right? The average musician is just going to see this and think, oh yeah, it's just people. But each one of those people could really, really be a fan of yours if you are into sales. And that's where I was telling you guys earlier, practicing your sales skills is going to help you as a musician, because you're going to be able to know and understand opportunities like this. So where would you guys set up to busk? If you were a busking band, where would you guys get it done if you've seen this event happening?
Realistic expectations about what they were going to get to see on the public tour of the White House. Before the demolition, the John Q. Public tour of the White House did not include any of the famous rooms in the West Wing, and it still doesn't. Post-demolition, it also doesn't include any rooms in the East Wing, because there is no more East Wing. And it no longer includes any of the rooms on the ground floor, like the map room or the library, because those rooms have been repurposed as offices for East Wing staff that were displaced by the demolition. A regular public tour of the White House currently has about 50% fewer rooms to see than even before on an already pretty limited tour. Now, if you're a billionaire or a CEO, you shouldn't have any trouble getting into the White House right now. But for the rest of us, regular Joes, public tours of the White House must be requested through a member of Congress's office. I think most visitors who are interested in the White House from a historical or an educational perspective are better served going to a museum like the People's House, which is run by the nonprofit White House Historical Association. Now, let's run through some DC transportation updates. Like the Air and Space Museum, Metrorail is celebrating its 50th birthday this year. Metro first started rail service in March 1976. So crazy. Happy birthday, Metro. You can now use contactless payments on both Metrorail and Metrobus. Contactless payments means you can use a credit or a debit card to ride, and you don't need a Smart Trip card if you don't want one. I made an entire tutorial video about contactless payments on Metrorail, so make sure to check that out if you haven't seen it yet and want to learn. The process is the same on Metrobus, with the exception that on Metrorail you tap in and out of the system, whereas on Metrobus you only tap once when you board. Metro also finally has an official app. It's called Metro Pulse, and you can get it in either the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
So it's actually really cool for people as tourists, but think about, like I said earlier, if you were a busker, you can now get an easy to use map as some kind of resource in order to figure out where the busking is, where the events are, because this is not the only event you need to worry about in DC. There's a lot of events that happen, and they're happening year round. So understanding the traffic and the flow and how to move around the town is important, right? And this is also going to be important for you buskers as well, because you could use the Metro if you have a reasonable setup. Like my setup, we brought a car, so we didn't have to worry about this. But some of you guys walking around with guitars and violins and trumpets on the train and stuff like that. So this would be super helpful for you.
Unlike most Metro apps that have existed throughout history, this one is officially supported by Metro, and it includes both Metrorail and Metrobus. You can still use third-party apps if you like. My go-to has always been Metro Hero, but as it's a volunteer-supported app, its long-term viability is not guaranteed. I usually don't talk too much about Metro weekend track work, but there is one coming up that tourists will want to know about. On 10 weekends starting this weekend and running through June, the Crystal City station will be closed and there will be no trains running through. This means there will be a gap in rail service between Pentagon City and National Airport. This is important because it means if you're flying in or out of National Airport on one of the weekends when this work is happening, Metro may not be the most convenient option for getting downtown. It's also important because I know some visitors prefer a hotel in Crystal City rather than one downtown. And I would suggest perhaps reconsidering that if your stay overlaps with one of the weekends when the Crystal City station is closed. Specific details are available on WMATA.com, and I will leave a link to the announcement in the video description.
And a lot of things like that you have to consider as a musician, because not only is that going to affect your busking, because let's say you set up out there and you didn't know this, and then there's almost no foot traffic, but you also kind of like miss a lot of opportunities as far as networking as well. So that's a kind of a quick rundown of what's going on in the city and how it's going to be able to, how you're going to be able to handle it. I think a lot of the construction he was pointing out has moved along a lot. The East Wing, I believe, is done. They had the ball in there already. And for most of what you're seeing there, like I said, you can really plan around it. You don't have to be in the moment for most of you, because trying to take control of the event is not the point. Taking advantage of the event is the point, okay? And so many of you probably are trying to like justify, I don't know, whatever reason to not do this, but we're going to deep dive into why some musicians actually take this as an opportunity and take advantage of it versus those that don't. And one of the other things we're going to look into is how exactly is it possible to build a brand through something like this and like actually develop a, I guess you can say, sense of identity through something like this. So let's get into it.
To the White House tonight, where a giant arena is now set up for an ultimate fighting event on the president's birthday, Sunday night. The UFC says they are footing the bill, but some are raising questions about how much it will cost taxpayers and who stands to profit. Here's ABC's Mary Bruce.
Tonight, the White House putting finishing touches on the towering arena for Sunday's big UFC fight on President Trump's 80th birthday. Overnight, testing the lights.
So do you see this amphitheater here? So the UFC said they just went ahead and paid for it. They just went ahead and do it. Now, there's two things I want to highlight here. The technical engineering needed for this project, right? So everybody who's into, I guess you can say, stage management, rigging and stuff like that, they had a massive opportunity here. The other side of it is that UFC took advantage of it as brand real estate, saying like, we're just going to go ahead and take the risk, like the financial risk of getting our name in this spot, this location at this time. And then on top of that, you have the fighters and everybody involved in the brand itself that comes with it. So like, if you think about, I don't know, some fighter dude who joined the UFC, he's not really representing the UFC alone. Like he has his own personal brand, right? So in that instance, that would be the talent in this conversation. The opportunity for them is that this is probably never going to happen again, right? At least at this level or at this point. And so again, solidifying yourself in that moment, in that piece of time is key to your brand if you care, right? Now, for those of you who don't care, you're really going to miss the opportunity of this, because what else would you be doing, right? What is the bigger thing that's going on at the moment, right? And for a lot of you, you can't really name it, but you want to name something that you really, really like. And that's where being a business person is going to take precedent here, right? So let's say you're running a record label and this wasn't a UFC fight or tour or event. It was actually a benefit concert or something like that, birthday concert. If your record label were to look at this event with the kind of business acumen you would expect them to, then they would be looking at how many people will be here, the type of sponsorships that would be here, I guess you might be able to see like the influx of how much a royalty rate costs during this event as well, licensing opportunities and things like that. But if you don't see it that way, then you probably don't see any of that opportunity there. So all of that money on the table, you would leave there. All of that networking, you would leave on the table. And it comes down to, like I said, how you can view and visualize a consequence from your decision making, right? So most people, they'll think that's the right decision, is to just, pick whatever personal choice you want to make about this event. But then there's other people who look at this event and say, no, I think this is an opportunity right here. I think I can see what goes on here that's actually valuable.
Sky above the White House ablaze. 4,000 spectators expected to attend, with 120,000 watching from the nearby ellipse. As you can see, this structure is just massive. It dwarfs the White House, and they've been working on this for weeks. President Trump says the event is meant to celebrate America's 250th anniversary.
We're having a big fight. It's never going to happen again. Never happened before.
The UFC insists they're footing the bill, which already tops $60 million. But this is a massive marketing opportunity.
Like, yeah, that's exactly what I was pointing out. So they went ahead and footed a $60 million once in a lifetime bill in order to get the marketing opportunity, right? Because you got to think about all the fighters that would want to do this. And then you got to think about all the brands that also want to get their, you know, face on these, I guess you can say, chairs, banisters, walls, and, you know, all kinds of stuff, these TV screens. It's an extremely big opportunity. And the cool part about this is that because they're footing the bill, it also sets the precedent that this could be done in other industries. So take the thing you care about. How much would you pay to get in front of the White House on an event like this, right? And that's where your, again, business acumen has to kick in. And we're like, man, how can I make what I really, really like and what I care about so valuable, so undeniably valuable, that I'm willing to, you know, foot the bill for it, $60 million deep, and work with, you know, my local government to make this event happen for the branding opportunity. A lot of you can't really consider that because, you know, it's not an opportunity on the table, but you got to think neither did the UFC. Like, you got to be able to visualize it within yourself from the beginning, right? So now that I've placed that on the table, how do you view your, I guess you can say, resume so far as an artist? Do you look at it as a representation of things you've accomplished, or do you look at your resume as something that you're just proud of because of their personal, you know, sentimental value? Like maybe you played at dad's cookout, maybe your little brother had a graduation, your sister got married, so you played the trumpet, you know, stuff like that, right? But how much does that resume compete with the people who would be booked for an event like this? Okay, that's the part many musicians really struggle with because they don't really want to compete in terms of calling themselves superstars or having to step on somebody else's opportunity in order to maintain their own. But that is a reality here. There's almost no other brand that would have put up $60 million for this event because they can't. But in general, I don't think they would have because of whatever reason they can come up with. So the winner is the one that tells the story, essentially.
Corporate sponsorships prominently displayed around the cage. And taxpayer money will be spent on Super Bowl level security handled by the Secret Service. Trump has a long friendship with USC Chief Dana White. The administration now launching new partnerships.
1, 2, 3.
UFC fighters coming in to train FBI agents in hand-to-hand combat.
Thanks to the great partnership with the UFC.
Damn, so these FBI agents at the White House have UFC training? I would never fight one of these dudes.
We're seeing about 300 agents come through here and learn these amazing tactics so they can safeguard American lives.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio even comparing the UFC to the moon landing.
When President Kennedy announced that we were going to put a man on the moon and return him safely to the earth, no one thought that was possible, and we did it. We are a nation founded on doing what no one else dared to do and no one else aspired to do. And at some level, that's what this whole company, what UFC has been.
Sunday's extravaganza, part of Trump's campaign to refashion Washington, from the building of his ballroom to renovating the reflecting pool. Today,
so that's what the reflecting pool looks like now. For most people, at least even locally, they probably won't even get out their house to go look. And it's not even like a right or wrong thing. It's just that most locals don't get out of their house to go look at the amazing things they have going on locally. And it's a weird phenomenon, but once you go out and see all that stuff and then look at it from a different perspective as like, this is this downtown area or the capital of my city or something like that represents an international hub, it looks a lot different, right? So I talked about, I think 2 weeks ago, about how like my college was able to set up the Symphony of Soul marching band and things like that, and how they were able to go from a normal school to a university and stuff like that. Well, one of the things that my band director in present time was telling us was that amidst all of that history was the actual unique location of where it was. We were located in Maryland, which was in between DC and let's say like New York, and then Chicago and Detroit is like not too far. Atlanta's right there, about an hour away flight, you know? And so when he explained it that way, it actually, for at least some of us in the band that were listening, opened their eyes towards the opportunity we had. So we weren't really thinking like, oh, when I graduate, I'm gonna go get a job. At that point, we were like, yo, if we can graduate and get good at this, we can actually take this around the world. We can actually go find more opportunities, possibly go back to school and things like that and continue to learn and get better at this stuff.
Reflecting pool. Today, Trump posting these pictures. Workers re-gilding statues near the Lincoln Memorial. it hasn't all gone smoothly. A judge has ordered the administration to remove Trump's name from the Kennedy Center by midnight. Today, workers spotted on scaffolding ready to take it down. But the Justice Department filed a last-minute appeal, arguing removing Trump's name would impede the center's fundraising efforts. And Witt critics call Sunday's Ultimate Fighting event corrupt, alleging the president is giving his friends access to government grounds to hype their business. Trump himself owns significant stock in the UFC's parent company, but the White House insists there is no conflict of interest. Witt.
All right, Mariar, thanks to you tonight. To the White House.
For most of you, this was actually going to be more of a learning experience, right? Like I said, you're not, especially if you're a local musician there, it's 9 times out of 10 you don't really participate in the local tourism there, and it's just a thing around the world. Like if you go to Paris, you'll see a lot of people who are not from Paris around the Eiffel Tower, the Eiffel Tower, and so what I'm trying to show you here is that the opportunity laid in front of you this particular year is once in a lifetime, but I'm trying to show you how you can see these events, right? Because let's say a Singaporean, I don't know, group comes over to the United States and they take your opportunity here. Well, the reason they would have took it is because they seen the value in it, right? They said yes to the gig. But then when Singapore has their celebrations or their Independence Day celebration, are you looking at the opportunity that they're offering you in the reverse, right? And so, like I say in this channel, you want to be able to see something, visualize the result, and then be able to act on it with the best, decision making that you have, right? And it's a practice. It's not something you're going to just get right throughout your career. Like, for example, you rappers and things like that. Part of how you rap and what you rap about is going to play a huge role in your career trajectory. But if you're not thinking about it and you're just like, I'm just going to live life how I feel comfortable, then you'll pretty much get what comes to you. There's no real plan for a result. And that's the like I said, the big issue with artists, because it's kind of like in our nature to just be kind of spontaneous and like jumping around and not really understanding things full-fledged before we say full body yes, So let's get into our next clip where we break down a little bit more about like the culture that we see here.
Joseph Thompson, welcome to Chatter. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Shane. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, this is fitting that we're on a podcast, because so much of what we're going to be talking about is the things that were on the radio and music. You are the author of the new book, Cold War Country: How Nashville's Music Row and the Pentagon Created the Sound of American Patriotism. And I have to admit, when I saw the title of this book, I was excited, not because I'm a particular fan of country music, although I've grown up around a lot of it, as maybe we'll get into in the discussion. But the title just immediately made sense to me, because I so identify as somebody who's written about national security for 25 years and am fascinated by the history of the Cold War, of how country music is so associated with the military and the Defense Department and ideas around patriotism. So I was really excited to read your book, which I enjoyed. And we'll get into all of it, but I want to just start by talking about you a little bit. Tell us kind of where you're from and what you do. You're a professor of history, and then how you came to want to write about the history of country music through this lens.
Yeah, so I teach history, United States history at Mississippi State University in Starkville, Mississippi. I had a kind of rambling journey into academia. I never really expected so much to end up where I did. I have in terms of my just academic training, I have a very interdisciplinary background. I got my undergraduate degree at the University of Alabama in anthropology and American.
It's funny. I keep hearing about Alabama, and since he's from Mississippi as well, that area, the southeast of the United States, has like the firmest grip on American culture right now. I'm working with a director right now, and he's from, I think, University of Alabama. He got his doctorate there. It's pretty cool.
Studies to two disciplines that are, very much kind of embrace interdisciplinarity. And so I've always approached the past by thinking about connections between different ways of thinking, different sectors of life, whether that's, politics and consumerism and music. Obviously, all of that comes into play into my book. I kind of began to refine my interest in the academic world through a master's program at the University of Mississippi called Southern Studies, another interdisciplinary program. And there I wrote about the lost cause in music, which kind of gave me a little foothold into thinking about connections between political culture, ideologies of race and patriotism, and expressions of music. And then my PhD at the University of Virginia only refined that further and led me into this path. That's the academic side of things. The personal side of things is that I grew up in a very small town in North Alabama that's not far from Huntsville. And many of the people that I grew up around worked in Huntsville. Many of them worked in the defense sector in one way or another, often on Redstone Arsenal or as engineers working for the space programs or defense contractors in Huntsville. And I saw how much our region depended on that infusion of federal money, right? And at the same time, I grew up in the 80s and 90s at a time when the kind of political discourse at a local level and a national level was kind of trending towards conservatism, and a particular kind of conservatism that said, big government is bad.
So he's actually pointing out an interesting thing. I want to check out his book now that he said that. But what he's showing us is that he was in an area where people were working for the government, people were earning money through the government, people were working alongside the government, and as well as being funded by the government. But then the conservative, I guess you can say, perspective at the time was that they wanted less government affiliation or participation. So it's actually very interesting because that was something we talked about, I think, last year on this channel, where I was saying most of the consumer base in America can't manufacture. Like, they don't have the ability to manufacture in terms of understanding what manufacturing is, not necessarily having the opportunity to manufacture, because most of us can start a business and things like that. But it's that when I have conversations with people about like how money moves in their city and stuff like that, a lot of people really think like it's someone paying for like a transaction most times. Like, they really believe that there's some kind of hand-to-hand service most of the time, or there's some just big floating number contract that's just going around. But in reality, there are actual real tangible pieces of the puzzle that make your city, and honestly your whole state, function with the other states around it, right? And it can be something as stupid as like your state is has lumber, like that could be the main thing, or your state has literally just tourism, like Miami. So it can be very, very different per each state. But usually what you'll see is at least what he's highlighting here is there's not really a bridging of the gap between how people use the government and how people are actually viewing the government.
This is the enemy of the people, right? And I heard that not in my household, but with people that I grew up around, right? And so it's always been a kind of fascinating paradox to me about when people accept the role of government in their life and when they don't, right? And where they divide those lines. And this is not to call out some kind of, false consciousness that people might have or what have you, but just a sense of what makes people tick in this way, right?
Right.
What leads them down this particular political road? How does that have an effect on culture? I am a cultural historian by training through my interdisciplinary programs and through my degree at UVA. And music was always a thing that fascinated me in a personal level too. And so when I began thinking about this topic, I wanted to think about, okay, I have this political question, right? This paradox that I just laid out. But I'm a cultural historian, so I use those tools to answer a political question. It's a kind of roundabout way into getting into this topic and trying to answer this political question. Is saying, okay, yes, there's this disproportionate impact of defense spending on the U.S. South. Surely that has a cultural impact. So then how can we use music to figure that out?
And did you grow up around country music, or were you a fan of it growing up?
I definitely grew up around it. My grandparents were big listeners to country music, and they lived just across the state line. I grew up right on the Alabama-Tennessee line, and they lived in Tennessee and would go to Fanfare every year in Nashville, which is this big celebration where country music fans can meet the stars and get autographs and this kind of thing. So they would go to fanfare. And
So you even see like in how Nashville and Mississippi, how cultural events are helping musicians. Like he just explained how the fans can go and meet the actual artists and stuff like that. That's important because it's just like how you guys want to be able to, talk to your politicians or you miss your dad and stuff like that. Like all of that, it matters, right?
and Twitty City, Conway Twitty's kind of tourist destination. And so I definitely grew up around that. I sort of, as young people often do, they sort of reject the culture of their elders, right? And so I definitely grew up in a time where I thought country music was, I heard it all the time. I was inundated by it. And so it was the thing that I rejected for a long time, right? As I got into high school and college years, I came around to it and thought, oh, this is actually something really cool and something to celebrate about the regional history of the U.S. South in particular.
That's usually what happens. Like where I was from, it was go-go. And go-go was a thing that was kind of, at least when I was there, transitioning from the conventional go-go with Chuck Brown to the new modern go-go with XIB, CCB, and stuff like that, and TCB. So what you started to see were people that were kind of like just rejecting it in general, just to kind of say, oh, I like higher levels of music or jazz or whatever, right? And then eventually we all kind of came back around full circle and was like, yeah, go-go's pretty cool because it represents a certain thing, right? It's a culturally relevant genre of music. Whereas for country, it probably really does represent something bigger than just the guitars and the boots and the stages and stuff like that.
And I kind of came at it through like bluegrass and I was in college during the alt country scare of the late 90s, and so I definitely got into country music that way, and gradually just came to accept a lot of it, and now listen to it pretty regularly.
Yeah. I suspect we're probably roughly the same age. I grew up I was born in Oregon, but when I was 9, my family moved to Nashville.
Okay.
So I had grown up kind of listening to what we would have thought of as like country western a little bit.
Sure.
And then we moved to Nashville, and it's like that's why I'm kind of nodding along. You listeners can't see it when you're mentioning things like Twitty City and fanfare and all that. This was very much sort of like what I grew up around as a kid, even though we were all transplants to the South. So a lot of your book resonated with me for that reason.
Right.
But let's get into the story about really how this kind of alliance forms between country music as an industry, particularly with the military, with the Pentagon. Your book starts out with someone who is a fascinating character that I suspect probably most listeners will have never heard of, even if they know a lot about country music. Is a man named Connie Gay. Tell us about who he was and kind of the foundational role that he plays in the story that you're telling.
Yeah. Connie B. Gay, he really is a foundational figure in country music history in terms of, particularly in terms of the foundation of the industry.
He would have had a hard time in high school in this time. A name like Connie B. Gay, that's crazy.
And as you suggest, he's kind of the linchpin in my story about how we really get these institutional connections between what becomes known as Music Row, this kind of catch-all term for the Nashville industry, and the Defense Department. And he's kind of a typical New Dealer in the 1930s and 40s. He's born into poverty and in North Carolina, a small town called Lizard Lick, North Carolina. It's too good not to say on air.
Good.
Yeah.
So
And kind of grew up in poverty and looked for ways to escape that poverty. He gets on a agricultural education route at North Carolina State. And from there launches into a career with the FSA, a part of the New Deal, the Farm Security Administration. And when he does that, he gets a kind of a view into the way that government can improve people's lives, and also the way that mass media and government can intersect to get particular messages to people. And
Okay, that's key, right? That's the key thing we want to focus on here. He's showing us, or at least he learned, Connie B. Gay here in the story here, is that there is actually a relationship between mainstream media, government, and its constituents, right? Now they'll say media is the fourth branch of government and all that stuff, rada, 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 right? But the part that I want you guys to understand is that when we have the conversation here, we're talking about it from musicians, fans, and investors, right? So if you're a musician and you understand what we just said, that means that it's very likely that your fans are going to consume information from mass media sources to get understanding of things like the government and their own culture. The point that I was making about locals not participating in their local events was to highlight that many of the people that you would consider local would then only be informing themselves through the mainstream mediums, right? So in order for them to get their understanding, they would have to come out and participate. But then in order for them to do that, they would have to participate with government-led events. So there's a circular, like you said, paradox in the beginning, where you're going to have to really navigate your fans' sensibilities and also their understanding of the information and facts in front of them, which is why I started a channel like this, because if you want to actually consider yourself a fan of mine, you should be pretty smart, right? I want you to be smart. So however you want to view that, right? That circular relationship between government, media, and musicians is actually symbiotic. It represents something else as well, but it's symbiotic in that, like, it's not a real thing and you guys aren't, truly tied to one another, but because of the give and go or give and take relationship we have with, let's say, wanting police services, wanting representation, wanting clean roads and like somebody to cut the trees down and stuff like that, versus our own efforts to do all of that ourselves, is bridged between the communication, or it's bridged through the communication given to us through mass media. So like mass media giving us platforms like YouTube and interviews and stuff like that, where they can actually have you talk to a mic and then give your own opinion. But if it's a misinformed opinion, or if you're just, not really taking advantage of the opportunity, then it is what it is. And that's why it creates this paradox, because you would have to basically be prepared for that moment without ever getting the chance to know that that moment shows up. And for most people, they just rely on surface level information, like whatever Facebook tells them. If the new Twitter highlight that's going on right now, you just kind of roll with it, right? So like here, I don't really just take current events and just show you guys. I actually like try to shape a topic so I can show you guys something that I need you to learn from a certain perspective, right? The only real, I guess you can say, current thing is just generally what's going on. Like clearly there's the 4th of July coming up in like 2 weeks, but in terms of like trying to get you to highlight on like something that's current for the week, I avoid stuff like that because there's so much more information and context that you're going to have to understand in order for you to truly make a decision, or at least an opinion about what you're looking at, right? And so most of these topics that we look at here, at least on this channel, it's always going to be grounded in how your music career is going to connect to it, but it's also going to be able to expose you to a lot of different perspectives that might not be your own, which should help shape how you relate to fans, because you don't know your fans until they say they're your fans, right? Until someone comes up and says, hey, I like your music, you're just assuming that someone liked your music or didn't like your music. So this is the point that you're going to have to really take home with this, is that opportunities are everywhere and shaping them is your job.
The way that he does that is that as he's working for the FSA, he's promoting some of its conservation programs. And he figures out that if he gets on the radio, local radio in North Carolina, and promotes these programs, then he can spread the message of the New Deal programs in a much more efficient way through mass media. And I should say he stays in the New Deal programs throughout the 1940s. Well, flash forward to 1946, we're after the war, right? And he has, because of his connections to the New Deal, he has landed in Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C., he's still working for the Farm and Home Hour and being a radio announcer for this program. And he notices that whenever the Farm and Home Hour plays, they have an orchestra that accompanies the news. Whenever that orchestra plays something with what he calls a rural flavor, it elicits a great response from the listeners, and they write in saying how much they enjoy the music. And this is a guy who had grown up hearing kind of country and string band music, what would have been called hillbilly music at the time. And so this gives him an idea.
Hillbilly music is fire. You guys should go listen to hillbilly music. That is some fire music.
About the kind of power of mass media and the way to sell particular messages through its associations with country music. And so he convinces a radio station to let him be a daytime announcer on the air, if they will, and they'll let just all working on commission. If they will let him play whatever type of music he wants. And this is all a sort of plan to get more quote unquote hillbilly or country and western music on the air in the Washington D.C. area.
So you see how he took advantage of the opportunity in front of him to now promote music, right? You got to be able to think like that. For most of you, you'd have been like, oh, no, that's hard work. I'm not going to do that. Or I don't like the person in the White House and all that stuff. And you would have turned it down. But now he has an opportunity to promote what he's passionate about on the radio.
Yeah. And when he does so, it sort of causes a minor revolution in people's listening patterns in the Washington, D.C. area. You got to remember, this is a time in which, because of the war and because of the New Deal programs before it, this is a time in which people are flocking to Washington, D.C., from Virginia, from the rural parts of Maryland, from North Carolina, like Connie Gay. And so you've got these rural to urban transplants who are now hearing this music that they have grown up listening to. And it's really a reflection of both their commercial and folk cultures. And so now someone is kind of clued into the idea that, hey, we can sell a lot of advertisement, which is what radio is, right? Selling advertisements. We can sell a lot of advertisements and make a lot of money if we can put this kind of music on the air. And so that kind of launches his radio career. From there, he becomes a sort of country music impresario. And he begins booking concerts around Washington, D.C., controversially, including Constitution Hall in 1948, which was a bit of it caused a bit of a stir amongst the Daughters of the American Revolution there for sullying the staid confines of their hall there.
So he's even creating jobs. That's what I call those gigs and things like that. Those are called jobs. So that's actually pretty cool. So because of his actual passion for radio and stuff like that, he looked at that as an opportunity to promote things that he cared about. And then now he's able to like book gigs in Washington, D.C., the international hub of the United States, and be able to promote things like that. So make sure you guys go check that out. That's actually a pretty interesting interview. I'm gonna have to check out the rest of that in his book and stuff. But for most people, like I said, when you're playing your instrument in your room, you're probably not considering events like this. But when we talked about child prodigies I think 2 weeks ago, most people's parents think like this, right? You're like, oh, I want my kid to get out on big stage and stuff like that. But you got to think about what that means as far as your career, right? What do you get in return of it? So we've seen the child prodigy situation where they're doing all these major events and all these record labels. And then by the time they're like 27, they're like, I don't know what else to do. Well, part of why they don't know what to do is because they are not culturally relevant. Usually the transition is easier if you're growing up in the music industry. But if you're like so focused on like teaching or a particular instrument or a particular approach and things like that, you kind of miss all the cultural relevance that you need to be, socially attuned to everybody else, and then make like really cool decisions as far as your brand and stuff like that. But let's actually see how someone navigates specifically doing that, right? So we're going to see a musician that's going to transition into the more, I guess you can say, country music vein, but with a patriotic spin.
When you were taking American Rebel and creating a brand around it, what kind of risks, do you feel like you took that maybe other people wouldn't take? Because it's a big change for you, although obviously you're used to change. But what kind of risks do you think you could point to that kind of made that moment for you?
Well, the idea of American Rebel was to build a brand around the song. It was a song first, and the song was the mission statement for the brand and kind of the character of the brand. And when you're used to having a show and you get compensated for that show. You've got music, you're playing, you're being compensated for the music and playing. There's risks involved, but you're going to get paid. You're going to come home with a couple dollars in your pocket in the worst case scenario. So when you start a brand and all of a sudden you go from taking care of yourself to realizing you've got to hire some employees, you need help, and you need good people. Trust me, you got to have good people with work ethic, and they need paid. And so
that's something that I was struggling with, I think, last year, because like you said, when you create a brand, it goes beyond just playing the instrument, right? So here, until I got my hands on my own AI engine, there was like a lot of like administrative things that I needed done that was just slowing down so much of what I needed to do. So like I was trying to live stream, create, and write music and stuff like that, and be fit and healthy, and be a normal human at the same time. But then trying to run what would essentially be in my brain, a Fortune 500 company with just one person, right? And so the work ahead of me started to become so daunting that it was like I was actually considering this. I was like, man, I probably need an assistant. I need some kind of help with this, right? And like you said, the real hard part, at least, is trying to find people with a specific work ethic that you would find consistently within people, right? So you can motivate people to want to help you and be like, oh man, I really believe in what you're doing. But do they see the 7 to 10 year range in their head? And if they don't, then more than likely you're going to get the average work ethic of most people, which is like what they believe it's worth based on their paycheck and not really based on the project they're working on, right? And so it's probably difficult to try to get people to do that in general, but I can only imagine trying to do that with the volatility of the music industry as well.
You go from just being kind of taking care of yourself to all of a sudden, where we sit today with, 210 employees. But you have to, that's taking care of yourself is a little risky in your own business, but having the responsibility of taking care of others that have families, that are having children, that are buying their first home, and realizing that their income comes from you making good decisions at the company and their hard work as well.
And so he's absolutely right. And that's kind of why I wanted to highlight this video. Andy Ross is the type of person you want as a boss, as a CEO. I'm sure there's probably like learning curves and all that stuff that comes with being a boss that he had to get through and stuff like that. But at 210 employees, he's doing something, right? And so just so we can know who he is, Andy Ross is an American entrepreneur, country rock musician, and television personality who is best known as the founder, chairman, and CEO of American Rebel Holdings. And it's actually publicly traded too, so that's pretty cool too. His career spans several different industries, tying together by a distinct brand focused on patriotism, the Second Amendment, and the American dream, right? The brand actually started with his music in 2016, so they're 10 years old. Ross released a country rock anthem titled American Rebel on his album Time to Fight. The song's reception inspired him and his business partners to transform the name into a patriotic lifestyle and security brand. The company originally launched with concealed carry backpacks and apparel. It later significantly expanded into home security market by manufacturing branded gun safes, notably acquiring the Champion Safe Company for nearly $10 million. Okay, so that's actually pretty crazy. Expanding into consumer goods, the brand launched American Rebel Light Beer through a master brewing agreement to position itself in the patriotic beverage market. Okay, so do you see how the song, as he even mentioned in this interview, kind of like was the engine for all other sponsorships and things like that? And it goes hand in hand in what I tell you guys all the time on this channel, where you would have to figure out how to sell pianos. Right? He can keep making music all day long, but now he's created a lifestyle around his music to where, yeah, he can make music, but now that he's leveraged his delegation to put people in position to make beer, retail goods, and I'm sure they got, like, of course, merch and all that cool stuff, probably events and fundraisers and stuff like that. Now the music, as long as he's focusing on making really, really good music, that's a good engine for all of this. And like he said, he just got to keep his head on straight as far as understanding that he's taking care of people's income and making good decisions for the company, right? Before launching American Rebel, Ross built his profile through the outdoor sports and entertainment sectors. He founded Ross Archery in 2005. So he's been in the business side of things, like actually making businesses. A lot of artists actually don't have experience in that. They have more experience in being performance artists and not really entrepreneurs. And so he actually is more equipped than many musicians to take advantage of an opportunity like this. And he hosted the outdoor reality television series Maximum Archery World Tour. So he's even been a television host. And it aired for a decade on networks like the Outdoor Channel. He continues to write and release music that blends country, rock, and patriotic themes. He frequently performs at NASCAR events and freedom festivals and military celebrations. So, Andy Ross, really cool guy now that we've learned about him. Now let's see how he, from his own mouth, explains his journey.
Yeah, we always talk about when you're a small business owner, you have this family of employees, and you feel this, not necessarily a burden, but you do feel a weight to make the right decisions, because you've got people depending on you to feed their families. And it is a huge responsibility to lead that effort. Um, but I also think it helps when you are close with your employees that you can sort of share that vision and help them understand so they have a stake in the game, to want to see that success as much as possible too.
Yeah, I think, for a lot of people, a lot of people will go to work for a company that's been around 50 plus years. If you went to work at UPS tomorrow, if you went to work at Walmart tomorrow, John Deere tomorrow, a lot of, they're great jobs and they're great companies and they have great histories. And you should feel job security, I guess. But at the same time, the people's bread who's going to be buttered in them companies have already happened. So you as taking a risk as an employee, a person seeking a job, do they seek out 100% security or do they seek out an opportunity? Hey, if I help this company grow, I'll be the one with some stock and some stock options and the raises and the guy that, the promotions.
So how many of you knew that with the job market that you're in right now? And this is something the conversation is really hard to have with a lot of people because it goes directly against what your parents probably told you. But yes, he's absolutely right. If you were to but you got to know how to find these things, like what to look for and what the jargon is, right? But you could find smaller businesses or smaller companies that are on the come up. And then with your hard work and your dedication to making the company better, could see yourself getting equity for all your hard work, right? Now, how many of you knew that? And then how many of you think that's bad? How many of you actually don't like that when, let's say, a company closes, there's a huge payout to CEOs, or that there's stock evaluations that could make a person just a cajillion trillionaire? How many of you don't like that and think that's a bad thing? Well, you got to think about this as well. However you do or don't view that, Mr. Ross here is one of the businessmen that are actually taking an opportunity in doing that. So when we think about like, oh, the corporations, the large corporations, the large corporations. Well, you have small corporations like Mr. Ross here, or I would say medium corporations, because he's actually doing extremely well for himself. But the idea that what he just explained is actually a bad thing kind of baffles me when most people, especially as musicians, want to do what he's doing. We want to be able to make our music and then it be the vehicle for brand sponsorships. And then we want to make a company that can help people, pay their bills and alleviate that cost of living stress on people and things like that. And then do it and feel good about it, right? But like he said, if he does that and then the company winds up making him millions and trillions of dollars, does he become the evil wealthy all of a sudden and things like that? And I think that's the real stigma behind what he's doing, which is why he's saying you could look at those other companies that have like 50, 60, even 100-year histories. But the people who have made the money in there, the big corporation names that you guys would name all the time, Well, they did exactly what he's saying and offering right here 50, 40, 30 years ago.
So it takes, a risk to start a business, but it also is a risk to have an employee, someone want to come on and be the part of a team and really dedicate themselves to a company that's an upstart company.
And that's the hardest part. And like you said, it's one thing to need employees, but then you got to get an employee that has the mindset to get on the same page as you as a leader, right? Many times, even like when I worked with people in the public sector, it's like the complaints I would hear from my peers didn't really matter to the company, and they couldn't matter. Like it'd be like their hours or like how much they want to get paid for their the week or something like that, or their paycheck was like a day late, and it's like, well, that's kind of like the cost of running business. And if you think about the name of the building that you're working within, there's a lot of more problems that they would need to worry about, right? But the surface level front, like right there in front of you, entitlement is a thing. It's a real thing. So like now you have to navigate people who think like this and then have to put that aside and then say, okay, let me work with people that see my vision, or at least are sold on my vision as I explain it to them, and they're passionately willing to work with me through the woes of understanding what it takes to run a business. Because that's really the problem here, is that most people don't know what it takes to run a business and what actually causes the failure of a business. So then when they see it, there's no real understanding of what they're looking at. And then on the same hand, if you don't know how a business runs, you probably don't know how it's successful as well.
And we've had some people that have done that. They deserve a lot of credit for the success of American Rebel, and I hope they feel that, we're taking care of them, as they deserve.
I hear the consistency of small business owners with their employees. You sound very much speaking the same language. But American Rebel, it's not just a company; it's become a movement. From what I've seen and what I've read, what is the mission of American Rebel?
Well, again, the mission statement's the song. It all started with the music. But we told everybody day one that American Rebel, before we even knew what product we were going to make, we started the company to be America's patriotic brand. I want to see American Rebel tools. I want to see American Rebel grills, American Rebel beer, American Rebel motor oil, wheelbarrows, pool cues, dog food. I want Susie to go up to Mom and say, "Mom, what's Dad want for Father's Day?" And she says, "Honey, anything with American Rebel on it." It's a lifestyle brand.
There you go. I explained that myself earlier. It's a lifestyle brand. And so him understanding that puts a lot of work in front of him, but it also means that there's a standard that he has now for his brand. Now, connecting it to patriotism was smart because it's kind of like a slam dunk as far as what people crave. It sells itself in a way, right? For most of you, you're going to try and push something that most people don't agree with, or you would have to convince them of. But like if I take something that you already are passionate about and then improve upon it, then it's an easy slam dunk.
And we launched with our concealed carry clothing, backpacks, coats, jackets. We moved into gun safes in 2019. We ended up purchasing our OEM manufacturer in 2022. And about a year and a half ago, we launched America's patriotic, God-fearing, Constitution-loving, national anthem singing, stand your ground beer. And we've done that to overwhelming success. So we're starting to see the vision of a lifestyle brand. Here we are coming up on 11 years later. And it takes time. You have I don't know, that 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. Sometimes I think it's 2 steps forward and, 1.5 steps backward. But, you just keep going and keep pushing. And we're real thankful to be where we're at.
So just you said a year and a half, you launched the beer, and
Yes.
you've seen tremendous success. You're in 17 states now.
Yes, we're in 18. So
Oh, 8?
we've grown since you got the memo. But yes, we're in 18 states.
Well, I checked, and you are in Florida, so I do have an opportunity to try the beer as well. But I also love that you just launched your limited edition 250th anniversary Patriot Pack. So great.
So even with them understanding the importance of the 250th birthday, they're taking advantage of it. Their 250th birthday pack is coming out soon.
Timing to be able to participate from a branding perspective, to be able to participate in America 250. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, we're excited for that. We had the idea to do that and leaned into it. I've got numerous opportunities to play 250 celebration events this year. So, we're looking forward to doing that. I'm trying to play states where we do have the beer so that the beer's at the events. I'm playing in Gainesville, the Gainesville Nationals down in Florida, on the 7th, I think, of this month, whatever that Saturday is, for the NHRA race down there. And on Sunday, I'm playing the opening season monster bike rally at a place called the Twisted Fork.
And that's amazing. I'm glad he's got all these opportunities coming up. And like you said, I too hope he gets to play in a lot of the states that he has his own beer, and he could just multiply everything. But you guys remember the conversation we were having about Live Nation and things like that? Well, he's kind of like taking the other approach of this, where he has his own merch, his own beer, and hopefully some of his own events that he can throw at, hopefully in the future, some of his own venues, to where he can have just a good economy for the American Rebel brand. Now, the reason that's important is because it creates jobs. It creates jobs for other people. This is the part where I explained to you guys at the beginning of this podcast series, saying that artists have a social relevance and a social value to their community. If he decided that he just wanted to make music for Andy Ross's album, then you would have to really, really like Andy Ross. But he made it about something bigger than him, and it's the American lifestyle, the American patriotism, as well as the people that already are super passionate about it, right? And so what it then did is it allows him to now take what his music is about, that Andy Ross flavor that he has perhaps on his guitar and his singing and songwriting. He can now weave that into what he's providing as value to society. And that's the key thing I'm trying to basically get across to you guys here, right? The brands you guys develop, the identities you guys develop, it's only as valuable as you make it, right? If you think you're supposed to be like the prettiest singer with the cutest butt, then that's what you get. But if you want to actually like help clean rivers, and you want to, find missing people, or you want to, end wars and end hunger and stuff like that, then you got to like actually rethink your approach to a lot of this. And for him, it was, well, first I want to like, it honestly probably did start out like with the song, and then let's make merch for the song, until he started to realize like, no, there's like a lot of opportunity here, because people are passionate about this. Like, people are more passionate about this than I am, type of thing. And so he probably looked at that and was like, okay, let's put the pedal to the metal as far as how we can invest into this, because this is going to be amazing for everyone, not even just me.
Twisted Fork.
Down in Florida. So we're looking forward to getting back down there. And I'm glad you can get the beer. I mentioned when we were talking off camera that I just spent quite a lot of time down there in Florida. Actually, two complete weeks, a week apart. So I was down there for a week. I came back and back down there for a week. And we were setting up the distribution. We have a large percentage of the Anheuser-Busch network down there distributing our beer. We've also set up Winn-Dixie's, Total Wine. So we're already in some chains, rolling out in a lot of on-premise and off-premise locations. So it shouldn't be hard to find.
And that's pretty much the best part about this, because now you can take advantage of this even as fans, right? Fans, you guys want to be content creators and stuff like that, then you can find a way, I don't know, do American Rebel beer review, see if it stands up to the competition, see if the music means anything to you. There's probably a whole bunch of other products and services that American Rebel has, but that's where the fans can come into play. Like, if you want to say like, I'm a fan of this, that's what he meant. Like, what does Dad want for Father's Day? Anything American Rebel. Like, that's a fan right there, right? Now, as investors, it's a publicly traded company, so it's still early as far as like getting in and taking advantage of the opportunity here. But then you can also think about, well, if I am into this lifestyle, or if I see the value in this lifestyle even, then supporting it is only going to benefit me, and as well benefit the people who are involved, right? It's kind of like a fundraising charity type of logic, right? If I put money into it and they use the money right, then everybody should benefit. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. As far as today's show, we went through a little bit of how patriotism works for musicians, and we got a real good example from Mr. Andy Ross here on how you can actually take advantage of your patriotism and the events that are coming up, like the 250th birthday, 4th of July in general, and all the tourism and summer events and gigs and money and food and fun that comes along with these events, right? So you guys enjoyed this show, let me know in the chat and ask me any questions you may have, and we will get ready for tomorrow's show. I will also see you guys on the Twitch channel for gaming tonight. That'll be at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So I will see you guys then. I'm out, y'all. This is DameSmiff with